Welcome back to my 2022 Cannes Quest. Be sure to check out part 1 if you haven't already. Now, I've already reviewed a handful of the most interesting films at the festival, but there's still plenty to come out of Cannes, so let's get right back into it. The first film I saw on my second day in Cannes was Hirokazu Kore-eda's latest film, Broker. Now, Kore-eda is bar none one of my undisputed favorite directors working today, and maybe of all time if I'm being perfectly honest. The way this man puts together family dramas with such a light touch that underscores biting tragedy is truly a thing of beauty, and I will eat up anything he makes. So with that said, it should come as no surprise to anyone that Broker wound up being my favorite film out of the festival. Kore-eda is a Japanese director, but this is his first time working in South Korea, which means that Park Chan-wook not only didn't have the best Korean movie in competition this year, but he was also bested by a director who isn't even Korean. It's gotta sting, but Decision to Leave is great. You can check out my thoughts on that one in the other video. This film tells the story of a pair of brokers who kidnap babies from baby boxes, where mothers can anonymously and legally abandon their infants, and try to sell them black market style on the road to prospective parents. The catch here is that the mother of this particular child, played by IU, happens to join them along for the ride. Now, for most of the directors reappearing at Cannes this year, there was a lot of "if this ain't broke, don't fix it" going around. Nobody was really stepping out of their comfort zones, and don't get me wrong, Kore-eda was no different. But here's the thing. Kore-eda's comfort zone is so damn emotionally resonant that if he keeps making the same kinds of films the rest of his life, I won't have any qualms with that. Oh, Broker is too similar to Shoplifters or Still Walking. Yeah, and you're saying that like it's a bad thing? This man gets A1 performances out of everyone, including children, all the while creating incredibly empathetic character moments that feel so natural that you can feel your own heart falling to pieces. Everyone in this movie was in top form, so it was nice to see Song Kang-ho pick up the Best Actor prize for his work here. His subtleties are perfectly suited to Kore-eda's talents as a guiding force. And as far as the child performance goes, this is just proof that Kore-eda needs to guest direct every film that features children from now on, because this man got a charming performance out of a child, in a language that's foreign to him. Just give this man an Oscar already, Jesus Christ. I'm sorry if this review is a bit light on details, but there really isn't all that much I have to say about why Broker is a masterpiece. Every single element at play here just hits with near perfect accuracy, and my soul was in shambles by the time the film ended. So yeah, 9.5 out of 10, easy money. Never change Hirokazu. Any movie following Broker would have an uphill battle to fight, but even in that case, God's Creatures was a pretty huge dip in quality. This was my other blind watch besides Layla's Brothers, and yeah, this wasn't nearly as fruitful. God's Creatures is co-directed by Saela Davis and Anna Rose Holmer, but really the main selling point here is the A24 brand attached to the film. It tells the story of a small Irish fishing village in which Emily Watson's son, played by Paul Mescal, shows up after a long absence, and from that point on, ominous things happen. Or at least, they happen in the last half hour, because the first hour of God's Creatures was so heavy on droning atmosphere and little else that I nearly fell asleep 6 different times. Emily Watson is really strong here as a mother put in an incredibly undesirable position, and Aimsling Franciosi, best known for The Nightingale, makes yet another standout appearance in a very dark film whose brooding atmosphere isn't met by much worth noting beyond the performances. Paul Mescal seems to be this year's Cannes Golden Boy, between this and Aftersun, but in God's Creatures, I really didn't see anything in this performance that couldn't have come from any number of chiseled, morally ambiguous-looking 20-somethings. God's Creatures has a pretty intriguing and haunting premise to work with, but the directing duo just buries it under too much moodiness in the same way that the worst of A24's self-important productions tend to do. So the result is an extremely forgettable waste of some real potential. 5.5 out of 10 for God's Creatures. Sticking with the director's fortnight section, I also saw One Fine Morning, the latest film from Mia Hansen-Løve. Now, I'm not incredibly familiar with Mia's work, having only seen her previous film Bergman Island before this. But while One Fine Morning is, from a quality perspective, around the same level as that film, I'd say I enjoyed this film noticeably more. Clearly, this director likes to work with very understated premises, where the conflict is far more internal than externalized. What results from this is a light but powerful slice-of-life tale about a translator, played by Léa Seydoux, who navigates her father's growing illness and the rekindling of a romance with an old flame. Seydoux and Pascal Gregory are pretty much the entire platform upon which One Fine Morning stands, because they are just phenomenal in their restraint. Mia Hansen-Løve relays these performances in such a consistent manner that you feel the pain in this situation as if you've been dealing with it alongside these characters since long before the cameras started rolling. Not much else to say here in all honesty, because Miya's films are clearly based in drawing emotional power from minimalism. So I'll just add that watching this in a packed French theater was so much more interesting than it would have been watching it in a tiny local theater with 7 or 8 other people scattered around the hall. Those Macron jokes sure did land with the Cannes crowd. Anyway, One Fine Morning gets a pretty confident 7.5 out of 10 from me. Last but not least, my second day at Cannes was capped off with none other than this year's Palme d'Or winner, Ruben Östlund's Triangle of Sadness. Now as far as Östlund goes, I'm pretty much in the same ballpark as most other viewers. I think Force Majeure is great, and I like The Square, but I found it to be a totally questionable Palme d'Or pick at the time. So it's weird to see Östlund join the elite two-timers club with this. But hey, good for him. Now as far as Triangle of Sadness goes, I'd say this is somewhere between his 2 most recent films. The satire in this film about the modeling industry and the elite rich class is extremely obvious, to the point where some people will cringe at the fact that this won the Palme.
Can you relax your Triangle of Sadness?
He said it!
But for my money, it was a really funny movie which may not have been unpredictable in its commentary, but was definitely tough to predict in its storyline. This film is split up into 3 very distinct sections, each one having different standout characters, and the result is a story that honestly doesn't seem to give a shit about whether or not you're on board. Östlund truly goes balls to the wall with this story, especially in the second section, which came with some of the heartiest laughs I've heard in a theater in ages. Harry Dickinson is great in a way that has that dead-eyed model look down pat, but Woody Harrelson's brief appearance as a Marxist ship captain is every bit as funny as that premise sounds. Quite honestly, had I had my way, there are about 6 other movies that I would have given the Palme d'Or before Triangle of Sadness, but at the end of the day, its wide appeal makes a lot of sense, and I was thankfully one of the people who came out of it really enjoying the film. Kinda stuck between a 7.5 and an 8 on Triangle of Sadness, so I'm gonna be conservative and go with a strong 7.5 on my first viewing. The first, but damned if it'll be the last. That concludes the second part of my Cannes quest for 2022. Once more, be sure to catch part 1 if you haven't already, and part 3 when that one comes out. Let me know which of these films have your attention, and until the next video, I'll see you when I see ya.